Hey y'all, it's Crystal. Thanks so much for stopping by today. Just wanted to do kind of a December wrap up for my reading. I don't always do monthly wrap ups, but a lot of my reading updates were done through reading vlogs this month, which I know everyone kind of tunes into, which is fine. But so I thought I'd just kind of come here and do a quick little wrap up of everything that I read in December, because I read quite a lot, and just kind of finish out the month, finish out the year kind of thing. And so let's just hop right into it. And get this going because I got a lot to talk about. So of course we had Christmas Eve readathon, and I had such a fun time, and it was great. So I wanted to thank everyone who joined in with us for that, and because it really turned out really well. We had a lot of folks that were interested and joined in and participated. It was a blast. It was a fun time. So of course stay tuned for next year, because we're definitely going to be, or I guess this year, it's technically 2023 now, we'll be doing it again in December, so yay. So let's just hop right into what I read in December. I started the month off with December Park by Ronald Malfi. Really good coming of age story set in the 90s, about a group of teen boys that are trying to track down why some kids are shown up missing and then murdered. Has a great twist. Really loved the 90s nostalgia. Add it to your coming of age list if you've not read this one yet, because it was pretty good. Next up, I read The Nightmare Room by Chris Sorensen, and I loved this one. Has one of my favorite things of when someone comes back to their hometown. Like, I love that trope. So we have a married couple who have just recently lost their son, and so they've come back home to his hometown for kind of a fresh start, and they move into an old farmhouse that his father owns, and well, seems like they get a little bit more than they bargained for, and this was excellent. Love the conversations around grief and really good spooky vibes. This was amazing, and I cannot wait to read the rest of this series. Number 3 or whatever. Are I numbered? Not really. The Vessel by Adam Neville. I loved this one too. Folk horror, creepy vibes, mean old lady. Yeah, so we're following a woman who has recently separated from her abusive husband, and she has a young girl, or a young daughter, and she's just trying to, kind of make ends meet, trying to get out of her crappy apartment, that kind of thing. She takes a job. She's a caregiver, like an at-home caregiver. So she starts taking care of this lady named Flo, and Flo is a piece of work. She's a little mean old lady, but we learn lots more about Flo and this house and this property that she lives on, and this was excellent. I absolutely loved it. Highly recommend. And then I read The Undesired by Yrsa Sigurðardóttir. This was translated from Icelandic. Let me get that for you. By Victoria Cribb. And this was a really excellent kind of mystery, I guess, novel. Perfect snowy setting for this time of the year. And we're following a man who is investigating a home that was opened during the 1970s for kind of like at-risk, boys who've gotten in a little trouble, and they just need to, go somewhere to think about what they've done, kind of thing. And he's investigating whether or not, any of these, people that were there might deserve some monetary funds. Like, were they abused? Were they being taken care of well? That kind of thing. And it's got a dual timeline. We get some storyline from that 1970s, and then of course the present day setting, how those two connect. And I really liked the mystery here. I liked learning that past timeline, and then a little twist in the present. This was really good and very atmospheric, and I liked it. We'll definitely read more by this author as well. And then I read Maynard's House by Herman Rauscher. Loved this. Absolutely loved this. I thought this was fantastic. This is a bit older of a book. I think it was from 1980. Yeah, so it's kind of a classic horror. And finally got around to reading it. More wintry weather vibes. It's set in an isolated area of Maine during the wintertime. Lots of snow. And we're following a guy named Austin as he is he's a Vietnam veteran, so he's back from the war, and someone that he met in Vietnam serving with him was Maynard. Now, Maynard didn't make it out of Vietnam, but before he died, he did kind of will his property in Maine to Austin. He didn't have any family or anything to leave it to, so he leaves it to his friend Austin. And so Austin is going to go check out this land, because it doesn't, he's doesn't really have anywhere to go, that kind of thing. And he gets a little bit more than he bargains for, as he's trying to not just make his way in this kind of wintry wilderness, but as he learns a little bit more about this property and the history of it. It was very good. A lot of spooky vibes, a little kind of witchiness going on. Oh, I really loved this. It's a nice, really kind of slow, quiet story until it's not. And but it never felt like it dragged, or was like a slog to get through. I was pulled in immediately. I loved it, absolutely loved it. Yes, so glad to read it. Okay, then I read Autumn Bleeds into Winter by Jeff Strand. This was the group book for the Christmas Eve readathon, and this was great too. Another kind of coming of age kind of story. We're following a teenage boy in Fairbanks, Alaska. So again, you get kind of a wintry type setting. And right there in the beginning of the story, he witnesses his best friend getting basically abducted into a car by this man, and his friend is now missing and sort of presumed dead. But he kind of takes it upon himself again to try to figure out what's going on, and kind of gets toe to toe with this man, and maybe gets a little bit more than he bargains for. But this was really great. I enjoyed Jeff Strand's writing. This is my first time reading him, and definitely look forward to more, because this was great. So yeah, that was excellent. And let's see, I read a few, let's pop in these few little erotica monster holiday stories I read. Just mention them here. I read Groped by the Grinch by Melanie Nix. Yeah, read that. I read Reined In by the Reindeer Man by the same author, and Seduced by Santa's Elves. Some of them were better than the others, but they were short and sweet and smutty, so what more can you ask for? I also read Elfed by Ginger Kane. Yeah, that happened. Okay, so after that, I had listened to this one on audiobook. This is Frostbite by David Wellington. I've been wanting to read more David Wellington after I really liked The Last Astronaut by this author. And so this is a werewolf book, so let me see what he's doing with the werewolf genre. And this is set in the Arctic, so again, we've got a nice, cold, wintry setting, and we're following sort of a young woman as she is kind of doing this hike through the area for reasons we figure out later, and maybe she gets a little toe-to-toe action with this werewolf, and our story goes from there. We learn a little bit more as we go along about this werewolf, about this girl, possible connections, and little twists and turns along the way. There were some of the similar werewolf tropes in here that are familiar, and then a few things that were different to add a little bit of a spin on a werewolf story, which I appreciated. I really enjoyed this. Mine's kind of 3.5 star read. If you like werewolf stories, I would definitely recommend it. It was a fun time. All right, so then I did another audiobook. I listened to The Dark Half by Stephen King. This was a reread for me. This is for the Stephen King read-along that we chat about over on Brad Proctor's Discord. But yeah, I really like The Dark Half. I think it's a bit underrated, actually. I always have a fun time when I read this one. I did the audiobook this time, and it was really well done. And I just like this. I think most people know, but we have an author, Thad Beaumont, who also writes under a pen name, George Stark, and as he tries to get rid of George Stark because he wants to focus on more literary literature, and George Stark's novels are a bit rough and crime and gritty, and as he's trying to get rid of George Stark. Maybe George Stark isn't quite ready to let go. And I just really loved it. I love the spooky imagery around the sparrows. I like the dark half. It's a good one. Okay, then I read F Christmas by Rob Shepard. It's a short story, takes place at Christmas. Worth it to read it around this time of year. I won't say too much because this is short and sweet. If you're looking for a nice Christmassy, kind of horror story, add it to your list. It was a fun time. And then I dove into Parasite. This is by Hitoshi Iwaki, translated by Andrew Cunningham. This is a manga, and this is volume 1. And this is about aliens. Yeah, a group of aliens kind of come down to Earth. They're right in the beginning of the story, and they soon make their way into human bodies and kind of take them over. But in the case of this young man, well, the alien tried to make his way in, had a little bit of a hard time, and only made it as far as his hand. He didn't make it into the guy's brain, and so they formed this sort of symbiotic relationship the story kind of goes from there. We learn, as we are getting into what are they here for? What are they doing? They do like to feed on human flesh, so there's that. Lots of really good body horror in here. So if you like that kind of stuff, it was really good, and a little humor too, because this hand basically has a mind of its own, and there's some kind of funny scenes with the hand going out for a little walk and stuff. It's kind of funny. So I really liked this, and definitely hope to kind of continue on at some point. I'm not sure how many volumes are in this one, but yeah, it's a fun one, and I liked it a lot. so yeah. I then finished up The Snow Child by Ewan Ivey, and I really loved this one. I thought this was really beautiful, and really wonderfully written, and I just really liked this one. It's a sort of historical fiction story with a bit of magical realism. So we're following this kind of maybe middle-aged kind of married couple who were trying to start over their life. They had lost a child to a miscarriage, and dealing with grief and just looking for a new start. So they decide to start a homestead in Alaska, of all places. So they head out that way. It's Mabel and Jack are their names, and I love them so much. And they're kind of in their first year there, kind of trying to get the land situated and get things planted, all that good stuff. And during the first sort of snowfall of the winter, they just have a little spurt of fun, and they go build this snow child out in the snow, and they make her look like a little pretty young girl. And lo and behold, the next day, the snowman looks a bit looks damaged, and then they start seeing a little girl hop up in the woods, and we start learning a little bit more about her. And I loved this. I thought it was beautifully written. The author did a great job with setting the scene and really giving us insight into these characters, particularly Mabel, because she's definitely dealing with grief from having lost her baby, and feeling that sadness. And then they've been married for a little while, so things aren't always pleasant and happy going, and dealing with just getting older in general, I think. And there's some really nice side characters too. There's a family that homesteads about 10 miles away that they kind of formed this bond, who I loved. There was the mother of that group named Esther, who was a bit more rough and tumble of a woman compared to Mabel, and she was just a hoot, and I loved her. And this was really lovely. If it sounds like something that you're interested in, I thought it was really great. The only thing kind of criticism I would say is the ending felt a bit rushed for me, because this is a lot of time spent with Mabel and Jack and the little girl, and then it kind of does this time jump, and it felt, like I said, it just felt a bit rushed at the end, but otherwise, nice kind of 4-star read, and I would recommend it if it sounds like something that you'd like to read. That makes sense. Okay, anyway, then I read Mandy by Stephanie Sparks, and this was a lot of fun. It's nice and short. I sped right through it. It sucks me right on in. We're following a sort of young woman named Mandy, who we learn has some special ability to bring people back from the dead. I'll let you discover how she does that, because it's a little interesting. And one night she lives with her father, and one night she gets a knock on the door. This teenage guy is, or young man is asking for help. His friend has they've been in an accident, and so she uses her power to bring the young man back to life. But maybe she shouldn't have, because he turns out to be quite the asshole, and Mandy then just, it goes from there. It gets a little crazy, but this was a really fun time, and it was great. Yep. Okay. All right, then I read A Cold Place for Dying by Christopher Triana, and this was okay for me. Good kind of, I say definitely 3-star sort of story. I finished it and I read it, that kind of thing. But it didn't necessarily blow me out of the water or anything like that. But I'd say it's more maybe kind of like a thrillery type story. But we're following a man. What was his name again? Joe. Yep, Joe. Who. Well, it seems like the beginning of a lot of these stories has recently lost someone. His wife has passed away. And so it's Christmas Eve, and he's like, I'm going to go out and, just have a bit of quiet and solitude to myself. I'm going to go out hunting on Christmas Eve before this big snowstorm is coming in. And so he's out there in the woods with his bow, and then like this woman starts like screaming through the woods, running. She doesn't have any shoes on, and it's cold, and doesn't have like a heavy jacket or anything like that. And she, proceeds to tell him this story that she's being held hostage and she's been kidnapped and blah, 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 blah. And then, lo and behold, this man comes around too, and he's like, have you seen my wife? She's off her meds, yada, yada, yada. This Joe guy is caught in the middle. He doesn't know who to believe, and he gets just basically caught up in the middle of this thing, and the story goes from there. So it was a fun read. Like I said, wasn't anything, new or anything. Bit of a male gaze going on in here, but it was a fun read. Yeah, not much more to say about it. Let's see, and I saved this one for Christmas Day. I read The Vampire Who Came for Christmas. This is by Diane Curtis Reagan. This was a middle grade book, and I mean, yeah, it's a vampire story. So we follow this new family has moved into a house, and they've got a vampire living in the attic, so the story goes from there. It was fun. It's a middle grade on these old Apple paperbacks. It was short, sweet, and fun. And I had a fun time with it. And then the rest of Christmas Day, I devoured Frozen Charlotte by Alex Bell. I flippin' loved this. I thought it was great. And we're following a young girl named Sophie, who, you guessed it, has just lost someone. Her best friend has just died. And so she goes and spends a little time with her uncle and his 3 kids. But right before her friend died, though, they were kind of playing around with a Ouija board app on his phone. Don't mess with those things, guys. Those stories never end well. But she had tried to connect with her cousin. Was it Rebecca? I want to say her name was Rebecca. I'm not remembering now. But anyway, and so part of her, going to her uncle's house is finding out what really happened to Rebecca. And let's just say she gets a little more than she's bargained for as she is exploring what happened to her cousin. This was great. Not a creepy doll situation, kind of a bit of an isolated, spooky house kind of vibe. I liked this a lot. So I know that this is the book club pick for Amy McCall's new young adult book selection. This is the January pick. I definitely recommend it. And this was great. This was great. And then guess what? I finished it. I finished House of Chase by Steven Erikson, and I now realize that it's taken me almost the entire year to finish it. Didn't love this one. Didn't love this one, obviously. It was a bit of a slog to get through for whatever reason. I don't know. I'm not sure why. This one didn't have quite as much action as the other books. They're very battle-focused stories. We do meet some new interesting characters in here that I like though. Karsa Arlong was pretty cool. And of course we get a little more information about the world and what's going on. We get a lot of information in here. But yeah, I just kind of struggled with this one. But I'm looking forward to reading book 5 and hopefully continuing on with the series and finishing it out. I don't want to get slogged down again in this series. I want to gotta keep moving. Okay. I'm so glad I had to finish it. I had to let that one finish. Okay, I had another audiobook. I had a hold come in from Libby for the library. So so I finished Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney. I love Alice Feeney. I know some people don't like her. She has not done me wrong, okay? She has not done me wrong. I've loved everything that I read by her so far, and this one was no different. I really loved it. So we're following, there's a family. The grandmother has recently passed away. So they're kind of meeting for the reading of the will, and it's in this isolated setting, kind of Agatha Christie vibes, and yeah, I don't know. The story goes from there. Family members start dying off one by one, and we basically learn why. Full of family secrets, which is another thing I love. I love juicy family secrets, and twists and turns. I love my girl Alice Feeney. I just enjoy her stories, and I never see the twist coming. But I'm not one to try to figure them out either. But I liked it. Okay, and then I had a few days left in December, and then so I said, you know what, let me give this one a go. It's nice and short and sweet, a bit thematic for the time, and this is Lucky Girl, How I Became a Horror Writer, a Krampus Story by M. Rickard. Got this in my Nightworms, and so I said, let me give it a go. I heard mostly kind of reviews about it, so I was kind of hesitant, but Lauren over at Happy Haunts Library really enjoyed it, so you know what, I'm going to give it a go. It's short, of all things. I'll definitely just be able to finish it and knock it out, right? And I actually had a good time with this one. I think that they call it a Krampus story is why people don't like this, because it's not a Krampus story. I mean, there is Krampus in here mentioned a little bit, but it's not like a full-on Krampus story. And so I think that does a bit of a disservice to the story in general. But overall, I liked it. It's a bit of a thriller-y ride because there's some twists and turns with this group of people that kind of start getting together on Christmas Eve as they're in like college, and then we kind of jump forward in time as they're meeting again on a Christmas Eve, and it goes from there. There's like storytelling. It's a thing. I think if you just kind of maybe readjust your expectations with it, you can have a good time with it, but just don't go in expecting some like monster Krampus story, because this is not it. But I did end up liking it, so yeah. Okay, and then I read Las Posadas by V. Castro, someone else who does not ever do me wrong, and I liked this a lot too. So this takes place definitely around this time of year, around Christmassy time, and Las Posadas is I guess a Mexican celebration that that's something that's observed during this time, and we've got a woman who is kind of single, but always kind of looking for love, kind of thing. She just recently bought a house for her mother, and she has recently met, a man that she is really liking, but something happens on Christmas, I think it's Christmas Eve night, as she's kind of meeting with a group of friends, and the story goes from there. It's a short story, so I don't want to say too much more, because I didn't know what to expect going into it, and I like that. so just read it. It was really great, full of V. Castro-ness that I love, really, really fun characters, and yeah, a little spin on the story that I really enjoyed. So short and sweet, I liked it a lot. And lastly, the last thing I read was, of all things, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. Now this is that, of course, old medieval poem. So I read the version that was kind of translated by, who is this? Bernard O'Donoghue. And so I saw this list I saw this book on a list of like Christmas stories, and I was like, "This is a Christmas story," and yeah, it was. So right after the first kind of few lines of the poem, it's like it's Christmas time and Camelot, I think was the line, something like that. So yeah, it's Christmas. It's either like Christmas Eve or something like that. The knights are all at the round table. There's King Arthur, there's Guinevere, and they're all celebrating and eating and feasting and having a grand time. And in walks the Green Knight, and he's sort of puts forth this challenge. He wields this mighty axe, and he says, "Anyone here, I will give you one blow that's uncontested, and it only means that in 1 year following, you will get the same blow in return." So Sir Gawain steps up to the challenge, and he cuts the Green Knight's head off, but doesn't kill the Green Knight. He takes his head and is like, "Okay, deuces, I'll see you in a year." And so then the story goes from there. Gawain meets him in the year, and we see what happens, basically. And I really like this. I had a really fun time with it. It's definitely, Christmas really kind of into New Year's vibes. It was easy to understand, so I assumed the translation was done pretty well, and I don't know. It was just kind of a fun way to end the reading year, and so yeah, that was a lot of fun. It was interesting. So yeah, that was my reading month. I read a lot of things. I DNF'd a few things. Chouette, not for me. Let Vona, absolutely not for me. And I didn't end up finishing Wet Bones by John Shirley, which was kind of a bummer, because I did want to read that, but I just couldn't get into that one. But overall, a fantastic reading month. Had just a great time. So yeah, let me know what you read in December. Did you take part in Christmas Evil? I hope you did and had fun. So I'll leave it here. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, bye.